Hey everybody, Peter Bowman here with your BBB Attorneys Legal News Update. We got three things we want to talk about today. First, there's a brief update in the Adnan Syed case made famous in the Serial podcast. Second, we have another update with Theranos, another member going to trial. And finally, everybody's talking about Tom Brady's football and his return to NFL. And I want to talk to you briefly about that. But first, let's talk about Adnan Syed.
This is a Global Tel-Link prepaid call from
Adnan Syed.
So he is, of course, the person who was made famous in the Serial podcast. He's presently incarcerated for a life sentence. His attorneys that he has hired are looking to have some additional DNA testing done. Now, what's interesting is that in criminal cases, you truly are never done with potential appeals or what's called habeas corpus, which is Latin for bring me the body. And so he has been continuing to go on, and his attorneys have been working on it. So when they do this DNA testing, it's really interesting. They're going to take some additional assessment of that. And so they're going to take evidence that they have, scrape the blood, obtain whatever DNA evidence is there. And unlike the movies, you have to have a pretty sizable sample to do that. And then they're going to do some more advanced testing. We have seen over the years that as testing has gotten better and better, you have gotten more and more ability to exonerate people through DNA. So this DNA evidence on its own may not be enough to overturn the conviction, but is certainly a step in that direction. Of course, if you listen to the Serial podcast, you can tell that it's unclear whether or not he did the crime or he didn't. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what our justice system is attempting or should do in have that burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt. And so to that point, it really, beyond a reasonable doubt, is like 95, 99% sure that this person committed the crime. And we have that balance because we're taking away someone's freedom. And so I'll be interested to see what happens with this case and whether that DNA evidence is enough to exonerate Adnan Syed. Next, we have an update from the Theranos trial.
Elizabeth Holmes, once celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world, left court a convicted felon.
Elizabeth Holmes was convicted of fraud and other violations from her blood company, in which she said she could test everyone's blood with simply a drop of blood. And so her former boyfriend and a manager, president, member of the board of Theranos will be also at trial coming up here. His name is Sunny Balwani. And what I want to talk about is not so much that trial, but what I see in this idea of promising certain things for investment. We are in a world of startup companies and technology. And so the crime of Theranos, whether it was Sunny Balwani or Elizabeth Holmes, was not insofar as them just saying they were going to do something and failing. It was the knowledge that they had tried something, failed it, and then continued to lie to potential investors that they were going to be successful. You cannot do that. So if I, for example, wanted to start a company in which I said I could create gold out of thin air, and if I told people I haven't done it yet, but I really want to try and got lots of investors, and then I failed at making gold, I would not be committing any fraud or violations of any SEC or other investment regulations. If, however, I took that machine that I created, failed to make gold, and then told people that I was making gold successfully or that it was doing well making gold, that then in of itself is that fraud. So for all those inventors, startups, tech-forward people, keep trying and keep doing things, just be sure to always tell the truth. And finally, something that's dear to my heart, the Tom Brady football. So, if you haven't heard, Tom Brady is returning to football after his retirement, and then he's done now with Brett Favre, which I loved Brady for my whole life, but now that he's coming back to the sport, I just really struggle with it. But regardless, hours before he announced his return to the football field, there was an auction for his final touchdown ball. He threw a long touchdown pass to Mike Evans in a playoff game against the Rams, in which they ultimately lost. Mike Evans threw that ball into the stadium. One of the members of the crowd luckily grabbed that ball and made a cool $500,000 on that ball going to auction because some lucky bidder thought they were buying Tom Brady's final touchdown pass football. And of course, hours later, now he's back in the game. What can that person do? Legally, there's probably not a lot of options. He could potentially renege on the sale. Depends upon the terms and conditions of him registering as a bidder and what that auction house says. There is some law that's a little bit of a gray area where if you are in an auction and you get the piece that you purchased in the auction and it is not what you thought it would be, then you have the opportunity to decline accepting and paying for that piece. In this case, facts and circumstances changed it almost within hours of the ending of the bidding, and so I think there is a potential that he could invalidate the sale and, of course, not purchase the football. The other thing, though, is he may want to do so because it's a pretty funny story, and as we know in collectibles, stories like that can add value to it, as opposed to maybe finally getting Tom Brady's final true touchdown pass when he retires with, who knows, when he's 50, 60 years old. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, is the legal news from BBB Attorneys. We'll catch up with you soon. Thanks.